The house was quiet now. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that feels earned after a long day. This was the silence that arrives after something breaks. Something important. Robyn sat alone on the staircase, a half-full mug of tea forgotten in her hands. Her eyes were locked on the blank television screen across the room, still reeling from the footage they'd watched the day before. Courtroom scenes, public fallout, and the word that wouldn't stop echoing in her mind: fraud. The man she had once believed would protect their family's legacy had falsified documents. Cody, the ever-confident voice behind endless plans, spreadsheets, and grand visions, had quietly rewritten the future. Not in the way dreamers do with passion and promise, but in ink and deception. "I was trying to make it all work," he had said during the hearing, his hands trembling. But no one was convinced. Not the judge, not the family, and not Robyn anymore. The front door creaked open. She tensed. Cody walked in, covered in the red dust of Coyote Pass. His tie hung loose around his neck. His face, aged from stress, was unreadable. "I had to walk the land," he muttered, voice hoarse. "I needed to feel if it was still mine." Robyn didn't look at him. "Is it?" He stopped in his tracks. His face twisted with something that hovered between frustration and despair. "They took it from me," he said. "After everything I gave." "They didn't take anything," Robyn interrupted, rising from the stairs. "You signed it away. You rewrote names. You changed futures. That wasn't them. That was you." Cody turned sharply. "I didn't mean to lie. The titles were messy. I was fixing it." "Fixing it?" Her voice rose. "You removed Meri. You removed Janelle. You didn't fix anything. You erased them." The silence returned. But it was no longer just cold. It was final. Across town, a group of the adult Brown children huddled around a corner booth in a local diner. The air was thick with quiet frustration and shared realization. Gabriel scrolled through his phone. "It's all in the court records," he said. "Digital signature, fake witnesses. He really made Mom's name up." Gwendolyn snorted. "He always said he was protecting the family. Turns out he was just protecting himself." Aurora, Robyn's daughter, looked down. "Mom's devastated. She didn't know." "I don't blame her," Savannah said. "But we can't pretend this didn't happen." The group went quiet again. A different kind of silence, the kind that settles after the illusion has shattered. No more family therapy sessions, no staged apologies. This wasn't a scene from a TV show anymore. It was real. 2 weeks later, Meri stood on a plot of Coyote Pass land under a crisp, clear sky. Around her, construction stakes marked the future. She didn't feel bitter. Not anymore. She felt something steadier, clarity. She stepped carefully through the dirt, clipboard in hand, stopping now and then to take in the view. It wasn't just a patch of land. It was possibility. A home of her own. A life she was choosing. A truck pulled up in the distance. Janelle stepped out and waved. Meri waved back. "Feels different, doesn't it?" Janelle said as she walked over. Meri smiled. "It's ours. Finally. No more chasing someone else's dream. Only building our own." Their friendship had once been complicated, defined by tension, competition, and shared silence. Now it was simpler. They were no longer co-wives. They were women forging paths apart from the chaos that had once defined their lives. Meanwhile, Cody was a man caught in contradiction. Despite the fallout, despite the court rulings, his life told a different story, one of luxury and detachment. His watch collection alone could tell its own tale. 6 Rolex watches, each worth thousands. A David Yurman ring. A necklace rumored to be worth a small fortune. He was often seen in designer shoes and luxury cars, living a life that no longer matched the narrative of a struggling patriarch. And then there were the dolls. Robyn's collection had raised eyebrows even before. But now, with the family fractured and the children still hurting, the $70,000 price tag attached to her vintage doll hobby struck a different chord. "It's not about the dolls," Gwen said in one of her video blogs. "It's about priorities." Because while Robyn expanded her collection and Cody added another watch to his wrist, some of the Brown children were left with memories of broken promises. Savannah, for example, hadn't received a Christmas present from her father that year. "I'll get it to you later," Cody had said. Later never came. In contrast, the children Cody shared with Robyn received motorcycles. The sale of the Coyote Pass marked the final unraveling. Each of the women received $375,000, except Christine, who had sold her share years earlier for a symbolic $10. She had given up her portion, believing in family unity. That unity never materialized. And now, with millions in play, the divide was unmistakable. Cody remained with Robyn, isolated in a high-priced home filled with collectibles and conflict. His former wives, meanwhile, began carving out lives that were quieter but freer. The media buzzed with questions. Would there be consequences? Investigations? Public backlash? The real question was deeper. What was left behind? A dream had been sold off in pieces. A once-beloved idea of a united family scattered. At the heart of the story was a truth that could no longer be ignored. The legacy Cody had promised to build with 4 wives and 18 children had been rewritten. Not through discussion or mutual decision, but through signatures, omissions, and unilateral moves. Robyn, once seen as his last loyal supporter, now stood unsure. Meri and Janelle, having walked away, had found something unexpected: peace. And the children, now adults, saw their history clearly for what it was. Not a tale of harmony and shared purpose, but of choices made in silence, and costs measured not in dollars, but in trust. Perhaps that was the ultimate lesson of Coyote Pass. Not that dreams can fall apart, but that sometimes the pieces left behind are more valuable than the dream across the empty lots of Coyote Pass, kicking up red dust that danced over forgotten tire tracks and stakes, meant to mark a dream. Once a symbol of unity, the land now sat divided, both literally and spiritually. The Brown family, once held together by a promise of plural love and shared purpose, now found themselves in the eye of a storm neither faith nor family meetings could calm. Inside the Flagstaff home he once shared with Robyn, Kody Brown sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by silence. Legal folders lay scattered before him, their contents exposed like open wounds. One document in particular had the words "fraudulent submission" scrawled in red across the top, words that echoed through his mind like a chant he couldn't escape. Just a week ago, he'd walked into the courtroom with a confident smile, certain that his interpretation of the family's property agreements would be upheld. Instead, the judge had reviewed the deeds, trust documents, and digital files, and deemed them intentionally altered. Witness names were inconsistent. Digital stamps didn't match. Signatures were replicated. The court had ruled Cody's version of the truth had been engineered. Chapter 1. The silence after the verdict. Robyn stared out the window from the upstairs hallway, her fingers gripping a mug of untouched tea. The house was still, too still. The usual flurry of kids' chatter and Cody's voice bouncing from wall to wall had vanished. In its place was a silence so dense it buzzed beneath the drywall. "Cody," she called gently. No answer. He hadn't spoken much since the hearing. Even the car ride back had been hollow, a vacuum of disbelief and humiliation. She stepped down the stairs and found him where she'd left him, hunched over papers, shoulders slumped, eyes unreadable. "I didn't mean to lie," Cody muttered finally, his voice cracked. "I was consolidating, making things simple." "But it wasn't your decision to make," Robyn whispered. "Not alone." He met her gaze, something haunted swimming in his eyes. "Do you think I wanted this to happen? They left me with a mess, multiple titles, emotional fallout, no leadership. I tried to fix it." Robyn hesitated before speaking again. "The others aren't responsible for what the judge found. You are." Those words struck harder than she intended, but they had to be said. Robyn had stood by Cody through every split, every disappointment, every camera confession. But this was different. The paperwork wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a choice. Chapter 2. The Children React. At a diner just outside Flagstaff, 5 of the adult Brown children had gathered around a corner booth. Their mother, Janelle, sat at the end, unreadable. Gabriel scrolled on his phone, eyes locked on a local news app. It says he created a digital witness, literally fabricated a person to sign for the land transfer. Gwendolyn, Christine's daughter, rolled her eyes. Classic dad. Gaslight everyone until the facts catch up to him. Peyton stirred his coffee aggressively. "I just don't get it. What was the end game? Control? Legacy?" "It wasn't legacy," said Madison. "It was ownership. If he held the paper, he held the power." From the far end, Savannah finally spoke. Mom wasn't even on the new documents. Neither was Meri. He rewrote them out of the family without a conversation. The table fell into quiet. There was no salvaging this. No TLC family therapy episode. No producer-led reconciliation on a comfy couch. This wasn't Sister Wives. This was real life. Chapter 3. Meri's Claim. 2 weeks later, Meri stood on a newly assigned lot at Coyote Pass. The cold didn't bother her. She'd worn her hiking boots, clipboard in hand, flannel shirt tucked into denim. Markers had been set, and builders were finally staking the perimeter for her new cabin. For years, she'd clung to the idea that loyalty would pay off. That by staying close to the family, close to Robyn, even when it hurt, she'd secure her future. But it had taken a judge's ruling and a set of falsified documents to prove otherwise. Now she's just about land. It was about respect. Janelle's truck pulled up in the distance. She parked and walked across the field, wind whipping at her jacket. When she reached Meri, there was no bitterness in her voice, just resolution. "We finally own something that can't be taken from us," Janelle said. Meri looked at the horizon and smiled faintly. "No, we own ourselves." They stood shoulder to shoulder, former rivals turned allies, not because of shared love for Cody, but because of shared survival in the aftermath. Chapter 4. Fallout. News of the fraudulent documents spread fast, especially once reporters dug into public filings. A local journalist revealed that Cody had attempted to adjust the ownership distribution just weeks before the land was appraised for sale. The sale had fetched $1.5 million, but only after Cody had streamlined the records. Online forums exploded. Reddit threads analyzed document metadata. YouTube commentary flooded timelines. Speculation about Cody's potential legal trouble swirled like a desert dust storm. "Is the FBI involved?" One fan account posted. Another replied, "Someone said they're looking into financial misrepresentation. That's federal." Robyn stayed inside. Aurora stopped going to campus. Brianna deleted her social media. The family's once golden image had cracked, and through the crack, reality was leaking in fast. Chapter 5. The Confession. On a cloudy Tuesday afternoon, Cody held a brief, impromptu press conference from the front steps of the Flagstaff home. A few local outlets showed up. So did Christine, silently, off to the side, arms crossed. "I want to be clear," Cody began, voice low but firm. "I never meant to deceive anyone. I made judgment calls I believed were in the family's best interest. They were flawed. I was flawed." He paused. "I regret altering the records without full transparency. But I won't be painted as a villain for trying to protect what we built." Christine stepped forward then. "You didn't protect anything. You controlled it, and you lost it." The reporters fell silent as the two locked eyes. "I'm building a house in Utah now," Christine said. "Not just walls. A home with truth at its foundation." And with that, she turned and walked away. Chapter 6. A New Order. Weeks passed. The Brown name no longer trended because of family unity, but because of legal drama. Property investigators launched formal inquiries. Depositions were scheduled. A hearing on civil penalties loomed. But beneath the noise, something else was happening. Janelle began construction on a modest home on her own section of the land. With the cash from the land sale, she funded it herself. No co-signers, no conditions. Meri opened a retreat center in southern Utah, using the scandal to promote healing and independence. Bookings surged. Christine flourished, her book tour sold out, and her new marriage glowed online with authenticity. As for Kody, he retreated from public view. Robyn remained by his side, though quieter than ever before. The couple had become a symbol not of unity, but of what happens when control outweighs collaboration. Epilog, Coyote Pass reimagined. Spring arrived. The red earth began to warm under sunbeams again. Flowers bloomed where survey lines once lay. In time, cabins would rise, owned not by one man, but by the women who had once built his kingdom. Coyote Pass was never about the dirt. It was about dreams. And in the end, it was the truth, not the lies, that laid the first stone of something real.